Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So, this edition of the news is a throwback. A bunch of cool things happened with 8.1. They're really good, and I want to tell you about them. I mean, imagine that. Not a single calamity this week. Pretty damn amazing. Now, this is the last edition of the news this month, so it's also your last chance to check out this month's Patreon rewards. They're monthly, they're shipped out in a few days. Oh, and Blizzard also gave me some fingerprint codes to give away, so yeah, you can check that out in the link below. I've also just revamped the Patreon just in the last week. We've had an AMA, the update, an office tour, 8.1 extended thoughts, 2 early access videos, and a design video. So pretty cool. There's a whole bunch of more like personal stuff that seems to have went down pretty well there. Those guys are the backbone of the channel. It's a massive help. So thank you to them. And with that, let's get right into the news. Okay, currencies. I've been talking about currencies a lot. I even got a little bit passionate about them last week. Now, the point is not to kill RNG, it never has been. I've always thought that the game should primarily be like random drops. It's an RPG, it's how they work. But that having some constant rewards while you progress, you know, it's a pretty good thing, just like the older iterations of World of Warcraft. Well, Blizzard seem to be moving in that direction. First, islands, because oh boy, their rewards have been strange. You have these random drops, but you didn't really feel like you had control over them, and it sort of just felt like, oh, you know, it's just memes, it's some random thing that'll appear in my loot window after an island. You didn't really feel like you earned it. Well, the existing rewards are unchanged from what they are now, but Blizzard are adding a new currency mechanic. So your Seafarer's doubloons, right now they're kind of just used for buff items. Well, in patch 8.1, the vendors are being updated with new rewards. So first we got a bunch of reputation items for each of the factions. They give you 250 rep in return for 100 doubloons, which seems really expensive. That's like too much currency. It almost seems like a bug when you compare it with some of the other rewards. But anyway, also for 100 doubloons, we have a series of 3 pirate hats. They come in red and black and blue, which is pretty good. Also for 100, we've got the Crimson Octopod, which is an aquatic battle pet. And then for 200, we've got the Albino Duskwatcher. We then have a bunch of toys. So the hand anchor will turn your main hand weapon into an anchor. The Cranky Crab is a mount for your battle pet, which is pretty damn cute. And the Gnarlwood Waveboard is a surfboard that lets you travel across the water. Seems pretty cool. Then finally, we have a new mount. It's the Saltwater Seahorse. It costs 500, and it's a recolor of one of the existing seahorses. That's not super exciting, but I think this is a good move in principle. Now, you know, you're going to be earning a constant reward while you're doing the island expeditions that I think is one that's a bit more tangible than AP. You know, you can take it, you can go to a vendor, you can do something with it. At the end of the day, visual character progression is so important in an RPG, so it's good to have it. People can pick out a reward, they can work towards earning it, and that's a really good thing. That's not all for islands though. We do have a bunch of new mounts that have been added. Their source is marked as islands, and that probably does mean they're just a regular type of random drop, which is a little bit unfortunate. I don't think it's a particularly fun way of getting those mounts. I'd rather you just, maybe as an example, you have the chance for an island event to spawn, and if that event spawned, then the mount would be a direct drop, maybe from a rare mob that would be the centerpiece of that event. I think that would have about the same cadence of rewards, but it would give you a greater feel of causality in your actions because you kill a thing, you directly pick up the mount. I think that would feel better. But anyway, we've got a new Dark Moose mount, we've got an Undead Horse, we've got a new Bat mount, and a Storm Dragon. Yeah, so finally a Storm Dragon that has an acquisition method that's not against the Geneva Convention like the last one, but only barely. Now, there are unused variants of all of these mounts, and to be honest, I hope they're just thrown on the vendor eventually. Overall though, this is really good news. I'm happy that they've done it this way, but that's not it, because we have 2 new currencies in this patch as well, and 2 other ones. We've got Honor-Bound Commendations for the Horde and 7th Legion Commendations for the Alliance. Now, we don't know exactly where these come from, but their description says that they come from fighting on the battlefields of Kulturas, Zandalar, and Warfronts. Now, I originally assumed this was war mode only. Perhaps war mode is a part of it too, but by including PvE content like the Warfronts, it does make me think that this is just a reward for doing the more casual content in the game. Hard to tell right now, but I just want to point out that having rewards for things like World Quest, something I've advocated before, I think would be a really good idea. Imagine how much better it would have been in Legion if the Paragon rep chest mounts were some sort of currency thing. Well, in BFA, it seems like they might be doing that. Right now, it's only on a few mounts, so there's 4 different mounts, 2 for each faction. The Alliance get the Priestess's Moonsaber. which is the mystery armored lightsaber mount that we saw last week that just looks amazing. And then they've also got a blue colored Scorpion in there for 1,000 commendations and 200 respectively. Then for the Horde, we get a Warbat for 1,000 and a red Scorpion for 200. I've got no idea what else this currency is going to be used for, but I'm just really happy to see it. It seems like Blizzard are kind of, they're listening to players' concerns and they're taking some action. Now, sure, this is not magically going to save the game. Same goes for the islands change. But what it does show is intent and understanding. And I think that's important, especially because I've been talking about game design philosophy being the core problem. Well, these changes speak to understanding a little bit more of that, design philosophy and I guess human nature and how people tend to interact with systems. For me, the core problem is that your time either being worth a lot or being worth nothing, and that all being based on RNG, leads to periods of dissatisfaction and too many low points. They seem to have an understanding that that's not good, and they seem to be making changes to address it, and I think that's a really good change of direction. So, for the casual player who maybe does a few emissaries and maybe a few islands, assuming that second currency goes in that direction, then this is just going to be a really good thing. But that's not it, because they have hot-fixed gold and Azerite gains from the emissaries to be more rewarding. Once again, they're looking at aspects of their game, they're realizing that some things don't feel compelling, and they're finally doing something for it. They've also done it again for the PvP players, which is great because for the first time since patch 4.3, that now includes me. They've increased the conquest point rewards for 2v2 arenas by 250%. Might seem crazy, but it takes it from 25 per win up from 10, meaning 20 wins to fill up your bar. Overall, that's good. It means that Blizzard are shifting the rewards to doing the gameplay that you want, rather than just doing all the daily bonuses and really feeling like you don't then have enough time to do the 2v2s that you actually want to do. And then RBG players are also seeing a similar change. And this is another great thing that seems to be the result of them listening, and that's brilliant. And just thinking about the pace of their game now that the dust has finally settled. Then, of course, the Azerite vendor is also on the PTR, and overall, it's not super surprising. We don't actually know what the acquisition rate of the currency is from in-game numbers, but we know what they've said about it, and well, yeah, that's kind of what's up. So the random 355 bits are pretty cheap, the 370s are a bit, they're a fair bit, and then the 385s are super expensive, and the specific bits of gear really do cost an arm and a leg. The devil is going to be in the details with this one once we see the acquisition rate, but we can just take a look at the current numbers. So the 355s cost 125 Azerite impurities, the heroic version costs 400, and the mythic version of the token, the random token, costs 1250. So the normal is 10x cheaper than the mythic, but the gains are exponential, such that in their example, a mythic plus 10 would be like 3x more Azerite impurities than a mythic plus 7, so it does seem to scale very much with your difficulty level. And then finally, the targeted 385 specific bits of gear cost 3,250. That seems to be a lot. They've said probably 6 weeks, and that kind of makes sense for a raider. After all, it means that, it's there to fill in a gap in your gearing. And getting a full set of the 385s via the random costs the same as about one specific, which, the balance of that seems logically consistent here. Really, if Blizzard were to just have Azerite change with spec and then have, this system, I think that'll be a lot of the annoyances with Azerite sort of dealt with. Now, sure, we would be left with something that I do not believe is very thrilling, but we would at least have a system that's not like an active detriment to the game. And then finally, to wrap up the 8.1 news, we've got some new raid mounts. So first, there is the Horde Battle Mech. It's really cool. It's like my favorite use of that mech rig yet. We then have a Pterodax for the Glory achievement, and I'm assuming the Alliance are going to have some sort of mount to match that mech, which of course drops from Mechatork. Then continuing on with patch 8.1, we actually saw Blizzard do something really quite nice. There was a lot of feedback about the Starfine questline, where essentially the player was pigeonholed into making a choice that seemed kind of logically inconsistent with some of the other stuff that the player would have been doing. Blizzard have since updated that, and I want to do this in a vaguely spoiler-free manner, but essentially you have to make a decision regarding Starfang. So essentially you're either siding with him or you're siding with Sylvanas. Previously, you were forced to side with him, and there wasn't a choice. Now you have to side, you can choose who you want to side with. You can either, no spoilers, but you can choose a side, and there's actual consequences. You get two different versions. Eventually, we'll get two different versions of the questline with different rewards. In this case, you specifically will not get a particular toy, but I believe you'll get other rewards down the line. This is more just something that, it was heavily criticized that they were sort of doing combining this with the, the player agency, the story, what your character's doing, and as is the running theme of today's episode, Blizzard seem to have listened and implemented a choice, so I absolutely commend them on that, and it does open up something vaguely interesting for the future, that, there's this quest line which players are going to be on different sides with 2 different quest lines within the Horde. I think that's a very, very interesting topic, and that could lead to, some really pretty cool things if they really go whole hog with it. But even if they don't, it's nice to see the narrative being reflected, or at least the player's role in the narrative being reflected in the quest mechanics. That's it for the main 8.1 news. The TLDR here is that Blizzard are making positive changes, and it's kind of funny, I made a tweet a while back that people really seemed to get behind, and then I woke up today and I found, a fair few of my points have been answered in this build. Now, of course, I had nothing to do with that, but it's nice to see that Blizzard's changes, I think, are going along a pretty good direction, or at least one that people seem pretty behind. So, this doesn't magically fix the game, but it's Blizzard moving in the right direction along multiple different, tracks of content. And that definitely is a very good indicator to me, and going into BlizzCon, it definitely does give me a little bit more hope for what they're going to do in patch 8.2, which of course is it's further down the road, and it gives them more of a chance to make larger changes that maybe they want to make but can't make right now for 8.1. Next, we've got to talk about Holinka, because Holinka is back as a class design lead. So Holinka was on the PvP team for quite a while. He then moved off for, again, quite a while to an unannounced project of Blizzard, and now he's back with Battle for Azeroth, which is very interesting. Now, Holinka is one of those people who, he managed to definitely get quite the hate mob. There's a few instances where I could sort of see why, but, a lot of the time it did seem like a little bit, sort of overdone and not really that productive. Now, it's worth saying that Holinka, he did preside over the Mists of Pandaria PvP stuff, and sure, there was a few controversies, especially about CC at that time, but I'm pretty sure they were regarded as very good, PvP seasons, and that's also in a time where the game's class balance was, or not balance, but the game's class design, I think, was in an excellent state. Of course, the developers do seem to disagree. I think that the mob classes were pretty beautiful for the most part, but I guess it's a more complex version of the game that we're just not going to have now. But he did preside over that very good period. And when we move on to Warlords of Draenor, Ashran didn't work out. I think that's okay. I think people can make mistakes. Ashran eventually ended up in a far better place. The sort of their plans for balancing PvP gear, they weren't mega successful, but they kind of worked. And then when we move on to Legion, well, everyone asked for stat templates, and I was guilty of this too. I thought, oh yeah, stat templates, that seems a really good idea, balance PvP. But, it ended up not being the right way to go, and we've all sort of learned that. I'm not going to massively blame him in that one. I guess I think a lot of the hate mob for him, I think, is ridiculous, to be honest. Even though, sure, there's a few decisions here and there that I disagree with, but there's, I suppose, a lot of people see a very small number of public faces for a game, and they attribute everything that happens to those people. When in reality, Ian Hazzikostas is leading a team of 250 people, maybe 200 people. Holinka, back when he was a PvP guy, he was probably leading a decently sized team as well. So a lot of the times what will happen there is it's not that Brian sits down and says, this is how this class is going to be. That's just not how it works. What would happen is that Brian sits down in a meeting, as people talk to him, and maybe he has to make a yes-no decision, but it's based on what they're saying plus his judgment. So, maybe he made the wrong call a few times, but I think it's worth having perspective of how the internal functions of companies work. I always say that, as an example, you right now and me right now, the way that we are in our day-to-day lives, that is a product of the systems in which we live, by which I mean our routines. What we do in the morning, what we do at work, what we do in the evening, they're the sort of things that dictate how we are on a second-by-second, minute-by-minute basis. So when you extrapolate that into the inner functions of a company, and this is why when you're forming a company, when you're working in a company, if you're in a leadership role in the company, you've really got to think about the systems, the mechanics of how your company works, how decisions are made, because the mechanics of how the PvP team is self-organized, that's something that's going to heavily affect their output. So by just taking the one public figurehead of that and then blaming everything on that one individual, Absolutely, that's the person, like the buck stops with them, but you've also got to understand how all of the other mechanics work and the other influences that they're going to experience within their job. I think that's just something that's worth kind of understanding. Anyway, the thing is that Holinka is back on the WoW team. He's working on class design, and I mean, hey, fair enough. It's hard to say exactly what that means. I don't have a super clear idea in my head of what Brian Holinka's ideals for classes are, but you know, it could maybe be an indicator that with a few of the classes in Battle for Azeroth, Blizzard maybe are not happy. Maybe they want a bit of fresh leadership or fresh direction on those things. So like if you're a player who's not happy with the WoW classes right now, maybe you weren't super happy with you know, the PvP stuff when Holinka was in charge, well, you know what, now he's back, and seemingly because Blizzard are maybe taking a different direction with their classes or want some fresh blood thinking about that. Maybe they've just, you know, shifted people around the roles. Hard to say exactly. I don't want to just make big claims about this, but it certainly is interesting, and I think because he was a public face of the team, it definitely is worth knowing that he's back. So at the end of the day, best of luck to him. No matter what you thought before, his successes are our successes. If he does good in his job with class design, it's good for us, because we play those classes. So the only logical course of action is to wish him the best and hope it goes well. And finally, it's time to talk about Classic. Of course, we've just heard about Classic. So the demo, basically the long and short of it is the demo is going to limit us into play sessions. Now this is so that everyone gets a chance to play, and Blizzard seem to have said that like they'll increase the play session time as the days roll on. And that seems fair, and your characters are not going to be deleted or anything, they're just kind of doing time slices to get people in. Now the demo will give us Westfall and the Barrens between level 15 and 19, so it's a fairly decent chunk of content that's like well targeted nostalgically, I think, and it seems like Blizzard are targeting a very authentic experience with this. The only changes seem to be BNet integration and things like, you know, reporting players for being mean, nasty people. The graphics do of course go higher than Classic, but there is an option that sets all the sliders to the same as Classic. So overall, yeah, we're getting a little slice of Classic pretty soon. We'll get to play it, we'll get to have a look. It should be on the pre-download for your launcher right now. That's what's up with Classic. I can't wait. I'm so damn excited. I mean, for me personally, Westfall was a very big moment. I remember getting my ass handed to me by those buzzards because I went in at too early of a level. And, you know, I remember being in Westfall for a pretty decent chunk of time, and that meant that I really got to know the place in a way that I don't think a new player with the new Westfall sort of would. It was a very different game. It was not a game in which the you know, the direct gameplay was the big draw. Like, the gameplay was pretty, you know, decent or whatever, but the big draw was the long experience and the, like, just the slow burn, getting in that world, exploring places, really understanding them, and it's just a very different experience. I'm super keen to see what that's like. I didn't play Nostalrius because I knew, you know, I knew it was going to get shut down. Like, everyone who was involved heavily with Nostalrius knew it was going to get killed by Blizzard at some point. So for me, I didn't want to put a massive amount of time in. And at the end of the day, I also knew, look, if I play Nostalrius, Blizzard could get really pissed off with me. And what happens when Battle for Azeroth beta comes out? They don't give it to me. Considering what the channel's job is and the role that this channel has in people's lives, I need to put that first, and that's why I kind of avoided Nostalrius. But, you know, now they're going to have a legit way of doing it, I'm absolutely going to be jumping in completely, because at the very least, it's going to be fascinating. So, that's what's up. We've got good news for patch 8.1. We have pretty good news for Classic, and Holinka's back. Overall, it's a very interesting time in World of Warcraft. So let me know what you think about these things down in the comments below, and I guess what other kind of small but high impact changes, you know, would you like? Because adding a few new items to the Seafarer's Doubloon vendor, that's not a massive change. Putting some, you know, tokens on world quests. I mean, we don't know if they're doing that yet, but that's a very small change, but it's one with a really big effect. So I'm interested to hear what sort of things along those lines you think would be good for the game. So let me know down below. And of course, to round it off, a massive thank you to everyone over on Patreon. They are absolutely the backbone of this channel. As I mentioned, I'm doing a hell of a lot more on Patreon these days. There's the vlogs, there's an office tour, I've got 2 game reviews coming up soon. It's basically just where, like, I'm experimenting with more personal content, and the goal is to have pretty much 6 days a week. There'll be something up there to enjoy. And then, of course, there is the Master Tier, which is, you know, this guy and this guy. it's pretty much the last chance to get them because they are this month's one, and it's pretty much the end of the month, which... End of the month, not end of the month. End of the month, not end of the month, which means that, hey, BlizzCon's in a few days, so I'm dead excited. I will have a video about BlizzCon speculations. Of course, let me know what you think down below. And yeah, with that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.